So here's some news. Twitter, now renamed X, when Elon Musk took it over, I guess about a year ago, there were a lot of concerns that him with his right-wing influence would turn it into what Elon Musk said. He was not going to turn it into a toxic hellscape that would scare advertisers away, and then he did exactly that, restoring the Nazis and pedophiles and people that advocate violence and all sorts of horrible people that had been kicked off of Twitter. He let them all back. And he's also started expelling and silencing anybody that criticizes him, mostly people on the left. And so now Linda Yaccarino was a respectable person to sell advertising for other websites, and people hope that she could improve the image of Twitter, because people are afraid to advertise on Twitter now because your ads will appear somewhere terrible, and there's no money, no business to get out of it anyway because there's not many people seeing the ads. And now they do have a pro-Hitler account here with ads from famous companies on there. So this is exactly what everyone was afraid of. This is what Scott Galloway said like 9 months ago. He said you could just get fired if you advertised on Twitter. You'd have to be stupid. You could put your money on Facebook or something instead, where you could put ads and they'd attract customers, and you would know that they're not going to be put right next to a Nazi or somebody horrible. And if you advertise on Twitter, you just expose your company to a risk for no reason. So the advertising budget has fallen down, and Twitter's just been losing money like crazy. So Twitter and Elon Musk both continue to be the worst case. Exactly what he said he would not do is what he does, and it's just swirling around the drain. Yeah, I believe in freedom of speech, which means I can say anything as rotten as I want and you can't complain about it, but if you do complain, then you don't get to speak. It's just ridiculous. And similar, the culture wars in Florida are just amazing. New College of Florida was considered one of the world's leading colleges, but the problem is that means it teaches things that Ron DeSantis doesn't like gender studies and black studies and things like that. So he moved in and forcibly replaced the leaders of the college with his political flunkies that are on the far right, and they immediately ended the official black studies courses that is approved for AP credit by other places or something like that, and now they just ended the whole gender studies department on a whim. And this means that they're not going to meet the standards, the national standards of education in America. And it also means that not only many of the faculty have fled and many of the students have fled, and they say there's a big brain drain from Florida as people who are highly educated and have other opportunities are leaving, since it's clearly a state that does not want education or value it. So this is something Republicans have been doing now off and on for my whole life, but the modern Trump wing is when the worst of the Republican Party rises to the fore, which happens every generation or so with many examples in the past, like Huey Long and other far-right populist Nazi-type leaders. But that seems to be, the Republican Party seems to have permanently swung over to there now. All the people I listen to who are authoritative on the Republican Party say there's no saving it now. The Republican Party has to collapse and be replaced by something else at this point. There's no going back to any kind of responsibility from where they are now. We will see. So Financial Times, Well, this I thought was interesting. Let me see if I can get past this paywall. This is one of the sites that gets there. Well, last time I tried to use this site, it just had an endless series of these things. It looks like it's still going to do that. Yeah. All right, so I don't have a way to get past the paywall. That's annoying. We'll have to skip that one. All right. Naomi Wu is a very interesting character. Naomi Wu has been on Twitter and on social media for years. Her handle is Real Sexy Cyborg. She's notable for her outrageous appearance. She looks like a go-go dancer from the 60s, ridiculously sexual, and she's very technical. She does technical building projects and technical analysis projects and makes all these videos about them and is really greatly regarded for it. But she's doing this from inside China, where, you can't just break the rules of propriety this blatantly and get away with it for too long. And on top of that, now she's openly lesbian and attached to a Uyghur girlfriend or wife or something. And that's also a no-no in China. So she'd been doing this for years, making all her money from YouTube and stuff, and now she finally got shut down. Her videos are quite good. Her technical work is quite good. And actually, I was very amazed. She had an article about why she looks this way, which was very interesting and very worth listening to. When she was a child, she was the third child her mother had. Because of China's one-child policy, what you would do if you wanted to have kids is you would get pregnant and then have a secret test to see if the child was male or female. And if it's female, you would secretly, illegally abort it and try again for a male, because only a male child can support their parents in their old age. The female child will go off to the other family or something like that. There's some enormous financial reason why you have to have a male child. And so they couldn't stomach having a third abortion because she was female, so they had her pretend to be male and raised her as a male and dressed her as a male. And this meant that when she finally got some freedom, she became a wildly exaggerated female to sort of compensate. And she explains it, but she says, she doesn't regard her parents having abused her or anything, and this is how she wants to look. And she had a video of the country music singer with the big flounchy hair, whose name I can't remember right now. COVID's making me dumber than usual. But anyway, there's a very famous one that did this in the 60s or 70s. The one that helped build the COVID vaccine, Dolly something. And she had an outrageous sexual appearance like this also. And they showed an interview of her with Barbara Walters. She said, you're a beautiful woman. You don't need to wear the huge wig and the ridiculous makeup and everything to look like that. And she said, no, nobody's making me do this. I want to look like this. This is how I want to look. Don't give me arguments about it. This is the way I think people should look. This is the way I want to look. So it was very interesting. Anyway, but she vanished a month or two ago, and she said it came out. The Chinese Communist Party shut her down, and so this is the way it is. She apparently revealed a vulnerability about a product, which Dolly Parton. That was it. Dolly Parton was her role model, and so the police came to her and they told her. She said, they clipped my wings. They were not gentle about it. I cannot post anything anywhere. She's vanished utterly. And she said, I can't flee the country because although they let me out, they'd never let my Uyghur mate out. So we have to stay here. So I'm just going to have to do something else and you'll never hear any more from me, basically. They've silenced her and she's accepting it. It's interesting. And it's because she found a vulnerability in the keyboard software people use to type Chinese, which the government wanted to exploit and they didn't want her exposing it. And there are people in America with similar arguments. So anyway, it is very interesting, especially as, I'm very interested in trying to understand Chinese society and why we're at such bad terms with them lately. And I think we're just going to get worse and worse. Anyway, it's a very interesting case there. And so DEF CON had a satellite hacking contest where you hack into a real satellite in space, and people won $50,000 for finding 3 ways to hack the U.S. satellites. So that's good. They've had a thing called Hack-A-Sat contest for years where you hack a simulated satellite or a satellite in the room, but this time they actually hacked a satellite in orbit. So that's pretty cool. It's nice to see the government accepting this. The U.S. Space Force has a unit dedicated to targeting enemy satellites. And this is really their official logo. It looks like a thing from a video game. I thought this had to be fake. This is apparently the real logo, some kind of Death Star skull with the circle. I don't know what the 75 is, but apparently that's the real logo of 75th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Squadron, which is our team to hack enemy satellites. So on it goes. And so the latest indictment against Donald Trump has 30 unindicted co-conspirators, which are people who are probably forgiven from their crimes in order for testifying against Trump. And I was interested to find out that one of them was the leader of the Cyber Ninjas. He spoke at a conference I was at. I don't think I saw his talk, but I saw his name on a list later. Cyber Ninjas was an independent consulting group, and they got well known because they were hired to do the audit in Arizona of the election, one of the many audits carried out by suspicious Republicans convinced that the election must have been rigged because of the lies of Donald Trump over the 2020 election. And he ended up doing a very strange, very unprofessional audit that still concluded that Biden won. And now he's on the list. He's down here, Doug Logan. He's the guy that ran the Cyber Ninjas. He's individual 25, apparently, unindicted co-conspirator. And so apparently his involvement in this scheme was peripheral enough that he was able to somehow escape being prosecuted so far for it. So there's that. Anyway, George Takei was on the original Star Trek, a very famous actor, and he's now a big advocate for LGBTQ rights and other things. And he's got a very good article describing what happened to his family when the U.S. government sent him and all the other Japanese into internment camps, stole all their money, dumped them into abject poverty, and so on, for the crime of being of Japanese descent in America. And so it's very interesting to read about it, and he says what they're doing to trans people now is just more of the same thing, and you can't just let people do this. Thank you for the good wishes. I've got the this Paxlovid stuff, so I should feel better pretty soon, but it is, I don't feel very good right now, but it will pass. Anyway, this is a huge issue. The large language models like ChatGPT and Google Bard were trained on an incredible amount of data they just took from the internet, like all of Reddit and many other sites, and they didn't get any permission to do it, assuming, like one might, that any data you can just get from the internet is probably available for use. But now people are suing, and the New York Times is considering suing and demanding that they take all the New York Times articles out of their large language model. And this is a technical issue I was just talking about in the last InfoSec Decoded podcast that I recorded earlier this week. There is no known good way to erase data from a large language model. Once you've trained a large language model, the only way to remove some of the training data that's sure would be to remove the data and then retrain the model, which at a cost of $40 million or something. So anyway, there's a big argument here, and depending on how these lawsuits go, this may be a big problem for large language models. If people can sue over copyright issues, I mean, clearly it'd be nice. The best thing for the field of artificial intelligence would be if we get some kind of clear court decision fast, so you can know what copyright means and what it doesn't. So then you can find some data and train your model, and not have to retrain it 6 months later as they decide that you weren't allowed to use the data that way. Right now, nobody knows what data you can use and what data you can't use, and that makes it financially risky to have these kind of models, because you don't know how much of it you're going to have to change. All right, anyway, that's enough for the news. Let me stop this recording.